Ida Pfeiffer was a Viennese housewife, but also one of the world's first solo female travellers that we know of. She lied to friends and family to start travelling, saying it was for religious reasons, but the real reason is she wanted to travel like a man. Bravely, independently, and to be able to follow her curiosity. She set off in 1842 at the age of 45 and travelled around the world twice by boat. She published her writings anonymously, but then was brave enough to share her name and became somewhat of a celebrity for doing something so unheard of. So why is there still such a stigma almost 200 years later? Women from all over the world, regardless of background, are stepping out of their comfort zone and choosing to explore the world all by themselves. The good, bad.
I don't think he just wanted my stuff. I just had a feeling like I had to.
I was totally in my own world when I heard an alarming knock.
And the great. Some people are inspired, some shocked, and some downright confused. Follow me as I travel solo to 3 countries to meet women who are doing the damn thing.
Hi everyone, I'm Yasmin or Yaz, but people probably know me better as the face behind the Strawberry Snaps. I'm 27 and I'm originally from Cambridge. I feel like I'm never really there though, because I'm always kind of travelling around or like moving from one place to another. But that's essentially me in a nutshell.
My name is Andrea and I'm 28, almost 29 actually. I'm from Portugal, but I've been living in Sweden for almost 7 years. Yeah, basically my main obsession is traveling, specifically solo traveling. And like my biggest dream is to just travel the whole world.
I'm Tess, I'm 22 years old and I moved from Canada to Scotland in June 2022. Even a city over is such a big difference to moving like a new country all the way around, like across the world.
So I asked.
I think for me, solo travel was always kind of that thing that seemed at the time very unrealistic. Like I was 18, I had my student loan. I didn't really know what to do with it. I knew I didn't want to kind of waste it on like the typical clothes and things like that a lot of students would. So I remember seeing like a flight to Italy that was like departing the same week, and I was like, why not? Let me just do it. And I think I kind of knew at that moment that a lot of people wouldn't be down to just skip a few hours of class and go abroad. So I kind of went by myself, and even though quite a fair few like bits and things went wrong, it was one of those things where you get hooked on it, I think, and you're constantly thinking, well, that weren't so bad, let me try again, or let me do something different, and you just get better with it as you go along.
I think it was out of necessity, to be honest, because basically no one in my family is like me, and I come from a really, really small town in Portugal, and I mean, it doesn't have to mean anything, but just in my case, no one was really that interested in traveling, none of my friends or anything. I got basically tired of just constantly begging people to go with me, and I was just like thinking, I cannot handle one more attempt of trying to get someone to go with me and then having to give up because people are just not interested, and I really want to go. So I just thought that I am gonna do it on my own, like, because why not? Yeah, so then I did it and I liked it, and then I was thinking, oh, this is amazing. Now I don't ever need to beg anyone anymore, and like I don't have to wait around for people. And also because it gave me a lot more freedom in what I could decide to do, in which places I could decide to visit, instead of always having to compromise in order to have company. So yeah, it's like a whole new world opened up for me.
Basically, like my family did a lot of traveling growing up, and both my parents moved abroad in their 20s, so kind of just seeing like how that shaped their lives and like them as people was inspiring for me to move abroad. And I also felt like my hometown was never like really home, and so I was looking for that kind of elsewhere. And as for doing it solo, I did ask a bunch of friends first. I was like, hey, anybody want to move to Scotland? But we had no takers, so I decided to do it alone because otherwise maybe never would have done it.
My first solo trip was Italy. I went to Rome. I was there for a few days. I remember staying in an Airbnb with a woman who didn't speak English and I didn't speak Italian. So there was a lot of communicating with like hand gestures, but it was so memorable because she used to always bring me like breakfast, and before I would wake up, it would just be by my door. And I used to think, you know what, like maybe this Airbnb thing isn't too bad after all.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I don't know if you would count it as a solo trip, but it was when I moved here, because I came alone. There was a solo project, I mean, trip to move to Sweden. And then after that, it was Prague. For me, it was just really exciting because that had been my dream my whole life. I had always felt stuck in my town and felt like I really didn't belong. So when I eventually decided to move, all by myself also, I just felt like it was exciting. I mean, of course, it's also kind of scary, and you know that you really are on your own because there is absolutely no support system at all. But that was the exciting part. And I don't know, just this part of getting outside of my comfort zone, I think that's one of my addictions, to really, really prove to myself that I can do it and that I can do it on my own also, because that's the ultimate freedom for me, that I really, really don't have to feel I need anyone.
Back in 2018, the year after I graduated high school, I solo traveled to Copenhagen because I had a friend studying abroad there. So I met up with him. So like my journey from Canada to Copenhagen was all solo. And then I went to the Czech Republic afterwards to meet with my mum. So again, like that in between was solo, but when I was actually in Copenhagen and in Prague, I was not on my own. I was like really nervous. I'm a pretty anxious person generally, and like I was just very worried I was gonna forget something. I did actually like almost lose my credit card within my first hour of being in Copenhagen because I was buying a ticket for the subway and I left my card in the machine, and it was really embarrassing. But yeah, I was just really nervous, but then like once I actually did it, I kind of realized that even if not everything goes to plan, like you can usually still find a way out. You can like buy whatever you forgot or have someone send it to you. There's very few things you need other than like your phone and a passport, and then you're kind of just set.
I think from family it's always kind of like, do you think it's safe? Or like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. And I think we see a lot in the news about how, sometimes you might get an individual who goes missing, or there's an incident that has occurred, and I think that puts a lot of fear into people's minds. In terms of friends, they tend to say things like, oh, you're so brave, or like, I would never do that. In terms of actual judgment though, I think sometimes people think, oh, are you like a bit of a loner type of thing. I think a lot of people don't realise that for me it's by choice. Like I love doing it by choice. I have nothing against group trips. I try to get a few in a year. I'm the type of person that I like to wake up at 5 a.m. and walk around. I know not a lot of people like doing that. So for me, solo travel is a way to make sure I can satisfy what I want in travel as well.
Yes, yeah, really much. I mean, both by family members, and I understand they come from a place of concern, and I understand their reasons for judging me, so to say. But even by other people, even though I also get a feeling that people get impressed and they admire women who travel alone, but at the same time, sometimes it's a kind of a mix of both admiration and judgment, because they think it's a stupid thing to do, and they are like, how do you make it happen? How do you walk around at night alone? How come you stay in places alone? I mean, if you stay in a hotel, then you're completely alone in your room, and God knows what can happen. Or if you're in a hostel, God forbid, because I mean, that's even more dangerous, I think. So there's all these details that I think about, and I feel that had it been a guy who said he traveled alone, people would just focus mostly on the travel part. They wouldn't focus maybe so much on the fact that he's alone. But as soon as it's a girl, then there comes a lot of questions about being a girl who is alone abroad. But I understand people just think it's way more complicated than it actually is. They never done it either, so.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think it was intentional is the thing. Like, I don't think anyone was, like looking down on me and wanting me to feel that way. But I felt very much like I was like abandoning people, or like not being a good friend, not being a good like family member, just because I was making such a big journey. Because I feel like if I just moved a city away, like you still can see people very often, but coming all this way, it did feel a little bit like I was abandoning people, and that was really hard for the first little while, but everybody's been like really, really supportive. So yeah, I can't fault anyone for feeling that way. I'd probably feel the same if any of my close friends moved abroad.
I think as a female, you kind of have to deal with a lot of passing comments from people, especially from guys. When they see that you're alone, they kind of take it as an opportunity to approach you. And I don't think that if you're in a group of people, they would do that. I'm not sure, how guys feel when they're solo traveling, but I can't imagine that women would approach a man in the same way that men would approach a female, I think, when traveling, especially when you've got a backpack on and you kind of stand out as a tourist. It can be quite tricky and tough, and I think I've had a few instances where it does feel a bit uncomfortable, but people are always willing to help. Like, if you need help, go to the locals, pop into the nearest shop. That's my advice, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot more you have to plan if you want to feel safe. A lot of things that men would never have to even consider. Yeah, I have, for example, lots of rules I follow whenever I travel alone. Like, I do not go out alone at night, and I always look up in each place I go to. I always look up if there's any areas that are not so good, and I avoid party areas. And I don't drink just because I don't in general, but I mean, even if I would drink, I would never drink when I'm abroad alone because I don't want to be put in that position. It's no secret that guys don't actually think about these details. They just do whatever because basically the world is way more safe for them. I mean, that's just how it is, unfortunately. But I mean, we shouldn't stop doing it just because of that, of course.
I do, even just from speaking to my partner or friends who have traveled solo as men, they don't even think about those things, and not even traveling, but just existing. I always tell my male friends, oh, text me when you get home safe, because it's just something I'm used to with my female friends. And a lot of the times you're kind of met with they give you a weird face and you're like, well, what? I just want to make sure you get home safe, but it's not one of those things they think about because they don't need to. So yeah, I think it definitely translates over to travel as well, with not needing to update people and have your, shared location on and be texting people hey, I got here safely. And I think also just because of you have kind of that physical advantage where you don't need to be holding onto your bag really carefully or keeping an eye out and not having headphones in, or just all those little things that as women we kind of keep in mind when we're traveling, when we're just walking down the street, that guys wouldn't think of because they've never had to.
Sometimes sheer bravery can come with a price.
So I think my biggest one was on my first ever solo trip. I was going to the airport, proper excited, and there was a passenger who, I'm not sure what his problem was, but he was making me very uncomfortable and very awkward. He was basically trying to jump onto my back. It was very, very strange. I kept moving forward, and I think a few Italians kind of started exchanging words in Italian with him, and then a fight broke out. A physical fight broke out, and obviously I was just sat there aged 18 or 19 sobbing, and the air hostess or the staff at the gate were oh, you need to come and give a statement now, and you need to wait for the police to arrive so we can interview you on what happened. And the whole time I was just thinking, I don't want to miss my flight. So they had let everyone board the plane, and I was just still waiting there, and they were waiting for security to arrive, and I was just standing there oh, my bag, what do I do with it? I don't want to miss my flight. It took about half an hour, so there was a delay on the plane, and because of that, the passenger who was being inappropriate, he wasn't there on the plane, they took him away. And I just remember when I got onto the plane, everyone just started clapping, and it was the most awkward thing I have ever experienced. My seat was 30F, so I was right at the back, and as I was going past, everyone was just sat there clapping like that, and I'm thinking, oh my god, that was traumatic. I don't think it would have happened, to be honest. I think it's because he could see that I was by myself and I was fairly young, and he was probably just thinking, oh, she doesn't know what's going on. But it was very, very strange.
Yeah, I did actually. One time when I went to Italy and I came to Bologna, that was my first stop. I was gonna go around by train to several cities, but the first city was Bologna. And I was gonna stay in an Airbnb. I would have my own studio from Airbnb. And I had talked to this guy who was the host for that Airbnb, and said to him that I'm gonna arrive at this time, and gave him details of when I would eventually get to the apartment. So yeah, that was all fine. He said he would wait for me at the apartment to give me the key. But then when I landed, I get a text from him straight away that on WhatsApp that he's waiting for me at the airport. I did not ask you to come pick me up. I'm taking a taxi. And then he was just insisting more and more and more, and he just wouldn't give up. And for every time I would say, I am getting a taxi, he would just answer, but why? I came all the way here to pick you up, and I'm just trying to be nice. And I'm just like, I am taking a taxi. That's just how it is. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it, basically. Yeah, so when I eventually got to the apartment with a taxi, he was there to give me the key, and he was so pissed off. Yeah. So he actually was mad at me and started to discuss this whole situation with me in this apartment where I was gonna stay at. Yeah, and I just basically said that I would never get into anyone's car in an unknown city that I just came to in the middle of the night. I mean, why would I ever take that risk when I can take a taxi like I said I would? Yeah, and he was really pissed off and started to say that, oh, if I wanted to do anything to you, I could do it right now. Yeah, so I was like, this is a problem that no guy would ever have if he was traveling alone. Those are the small things I always make sure to do, like this, almost like rules. Like I would never give in to this pressure of, for example, getting into his car just because he was insisting, because it's just not worth the risk. Because I mean, when we are alone traveling as girls, we just want to feel safe as much as possible. And if we are really, really strict with these rules, then we can know at least we did everything we could, instead of just sitting with some guy and wondering, am I gonna get kidnapped now and raped, you know? Yeah, so that was the worst, basically. I mean, to be honest, I don't think he would even be waiting at the airport had I been with someone else. Let's say I would come there with a boyfriend. I cannot see it happen. I cannot see why he would go to the airport, like take his own initiative to go to the airport and wait for us. I don't think so. And I mean, you're left in a really hard situation also, because there I was at this apartment after this discussion and after he went away, and I was thinking, who knows, he probably has an extra key. Here I am alone. I mean, I don't think so. I don't think he would come here and do anything, but you never know.
Yeah, I think probably just like feeling uncomfortable, or like you don't really have that fallback, because even when I was in France with a friend, like men catcalling us and stuff still made me feel uncomfortable, but not in the same way, like not to the same magnitude, because I was with a friend. Whereas I feel like if I had been 100% on my own, I would have been a lot more nervous and like uneasy, and it might have stopped me from like exploring as much as I would have. Like even with my experience in Manchester with some like random guy yelling at me, like it just really put me off that whole day. I was just kind of uneasy and couldn't get past that. Whereas if I had been with other friends, I don't think it would have like affected me as much. Like we took so many Ubers just because we were staying in like a rougher part of the city, and people were telling us like, do not be there alone at night. So we were taking Ubers, we were taking the train, and like planning it early enough that we were in the house before sunset. And it's like, nighttime should be just as like accessible and just as fun, and a lot of like really good memories you can have would be in the evening. So it's like, it's really frustrating to have to cut those out of your travel plans just in the interest of safety. It was all men telling us that too, like older men being like, oh, Marseille's super safe. I'm like, but it's not the same experience for you as it is for us. Like we had guys approaching us middle of the day, like a big group of guys, and like shouting at us in French, and it's like, that's terrifying. Even though it was the middle of the day, we were in like a busy part of the city. Like it just, I don't think people realize how common it is because they've never experienced it.
I would say it's taught me that I'm so much more capable than what I thought I would be. Well, like if you can travel solo to a place, you can pretty much do a lot of things that you think that you can't do, because that's huge. Like going somewhere by yourself, not speaking the language, not knowing what you're doing, not knowing who you're going to meet. It definitely is something where I know at the moment solo travel is a bit like, it's got a bit of like a hype to it. But I can understand why, because it does change you as a person. And I know it's really cliche and cringy to say that, but it is quite true. People might be quite surprised to know, but I have anxiety, and I've had anxiety from a very young age. And weirdly, when I'm traveling, I never get anxiety. But it's like something as simple as going to the post office in the UK will give me anxiety. It's very, very strange. And I think for me, solo travel has been a way to kind of control that, because it puts me in full control of my actions. Like, if I'm feeling a little bit anxious when I'm doing something abroad, I can just go back to the hotel, chill for a bit, and then head back out again. So I think people are quite surprised, because I think when they meet me, I'm very like lively and bubbly. But sometimes I kind of do battle with that quite a bit. And I think traveling for me has been the best medicine, I would say, for that.
I mean, they seem to have a really, really negative idea of it. And just like you said, I mean, what people see is only the bad things. Basically, no one is going to write an article about a girl who traveled alone for a whole summer in Europe and had a great time, I mean, right? But if a girl does that and a bunch of bad things happen to her, that's definitely going to come on the news. People will get scared, of course. I think there just needs to come out a bit more, like some more women who do these kinds of things and tell their story. Maybe on social media, there's many women who do that now. Making it obvious to them that it's achievable for normal, regular women. Because I get this idea that everyone thinks that you need to be super brave and you need to be really hardcore to do it alone. I'm like, no, really not. I am not brave like people think just because I go abroad alone. And sometimes it is scary, but if you really, really want to do it, you can do it, and you will at the end of the day see it's not as bad as you thought. Because I mean, I think it's still seen as something that women shouldn't do, even though I have to be fair, many people start to see it as a cool thing to do and like inspiring and stuff. But many others seem to still be stuck in this old way of seeing things, that's just not something you do, because if you do that, you're stupid. Because if you go out there and alone and a bunch of things can happen, if those things happen, it's your fault because you put yourself in danger. And I mean, if society still has this kind of messed up rules, then many girls who would potentially want to do it, they perhaps feel they shouldn't, because if something were to happen, it would be their fault.
I would honestly, like, as cheesy as it is, say just do it, because at the end of the day, like, you can always go home if it's not for you, but you won't be left wondering, like, what if I had done it, and like, how would my life have changed? Because my life has changed so much compared to like what I thought it would look like at this point in my life. It was like for the best, and yeah, I think moving abroad was like one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. So
whenever women take the step to travel solo, they continue. I have never met anyone who tried to travel solo and didn't continue. I mean, I'm sure there is. It's of course because of the people I surround myself with, but as long as you have things figured out and you know what to do in case something bad would happen, you will feel safe, and then it's gonna be amazing.
3 countries, 3 women, 3 stories. Through travelling alone to create this project, I've been inspired, moved and motivated by these women and many others I see making this brave choice to be themselves and go after their dreams. May we as women all do the same.